Hi, my name is Mark Baer. Welcome to the Your Town television program. My guest tonight, first is Denese Sanders and Justin Ward. They are going to tell you about the art of etching. They are etchers, and I am executive director at the Museum of Monterey, and we're going to have an etching show. So let's start in, guys. First of all, so let's just give a general definition of what etching is. We've brought some tools and everything, so let's kind of introduce yourselves, and let's, who wants to start? I'll let Justin start.
Well, I've been etching for about 20 years since graduating from California College of Arts and Crafts, and I self-taught myself by going into the printmaking studios at night and kind of learning the history and the process behind the art. I fell in love with James McNeill Whistler when I was in high school and read everything and anything I could about him, and just was amazed at the technical ability that he was able to provide. Etching as an art form goes back about to the 1400s and was a way to reproduce images and make multiple editions to illustrate books and Bibles to distribute to the general public. Etching really starts off with taking a zinc or copper plate and polishing it.
Just hold that up so they can see that.
Polishing it to a fine finish. Once you have the plate finished like this, you coat it with an acid-resistant ground, which will protect the metal plate from the acid bath that you're going to put it in. Once you protect it with an acid-resistant ground, you take any kind of sharp instrument, like an etching needle or a sharp instrument, to draw your image directly on the plate. You scratch through that acid-resistant ground, drawing your illustration directly into the metal plate. Once you've finished your illustration, you'll put it into an acid bath, and that acid will bite into all the lines that you've drawn onto this plate, making an indentation to hold the ink. Once the picture is finished and you wipe off that ground, what happens is you wind up with your picture bitten into the zinc plate. And once the plate is done, you'll ink that plate completely, wipe it clean with a rag, so only the ink remains within the lines that you've etched. Then you put it on an etching press, put a sheet of paper directly over the print, and run it through an etching press, and what you get is an original etching. And most artists limit their sets to, say, 100 impressions before the plate starts to show a lot of wear. The tools and materials that I've used in the past haven't really changed much in the 400 years of the art. And so I'm kind of the old traditional fine art printmaker, using the same basic tools and materials that artists like Rembrandt and Albrecht Dürer used in the 14th and 15th centuries.
So in our museum, we have Armin Hansen's original press.
Yes.
And it was quite which has sat there
collecting dust.
Collecting dust, unloved, a machine with a spirit yearning to get out. We fixed it up, and we were actually working it the other day, and
Absolutely.
It was kind of a real thrill.
I found out that the Museum of Monterey owned Armin Hansen's original etching press, and I contacted the museum immediately to see if I could use it, to see if I could do some of my own etchings off that historic press, because there's such a connection with the old masters of the past of Monterey, especially Armin Hansen, who's probably considered the premier painter etcher that lived and worked in the Monterey Peninsula during the 1900s up to about the 1930s. And it was such an honor and privilege to be able to use this antique press to pull some of my own etchings off of. It kind of connects me with the past masters of old Monterey.
And so that's what we're trying to do. So Denese Sanders has just opened up Open Ground Studios. And let's talk a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, just to piggyback on the history, I started etching in '82 with Warrington Colescott at Madison, Wisconsin University, and from there I went on to Paris to study with Atelier 17, Stanley Hayter, who was a real innovator in the idea of a community studio, and his work and the collaborations that happened at his studio at Atelier 17 in Paris that also then moved to New York really brought etching into the light of creative expression with color. Unlike the master's work, that was primarily black and white. And so anyway, I've had a love of etching since I was young.
So you have, so you're taking a more, a more avant-garde, more experimental road. So I mean, this is why I've asked the two of you in the show, so that we don't go one way or the other way.
Right.
And let's see a few of Denese's work, if we can. What are we looking at here?
Oh, that's an etching, actually, that I brought the plate for that, too, which is nice. I'll let, can I show the plate, too?
Yeah, when we're, so.
That's the first etching, and that's actually an aqua tint and a spit bite is what the technique is called, and it's on a zinc plate. Okay. And then the next one is also an etching on copper, which was a commission I did for the City of Minneapolis Art Commissioners. And it depicts many different neighborhoods in the City of Minneapolis and the arts that happen there. And then the next one is a piece I did recently that's an intaglio print using no traditional etching materials, but it's still printed the same fashion, with a colorgraph plate in the background and a monotype of the weeds and the breathing. And then the face is actually a photopolymer plate, which is a photoprocessed intaglio plate.
Now let's show.
So this is the zinc plate.
Let's see. Oops, the camera's on me. Let's. There we go.
This is the zinc plate for that first image that you saw, and the color, the ink was black inside all of the lines, or inside all of the aqua tint, and then I did a transparent relief roll of color over the top to give it that creamy look.
So let's talk about intaglio. Let's talk about some of the different techniques.
Right. So printmaking has it's a large umbrella for an entire art form, which includes stone lithography and variations of lithography, silk screen or serography, which is printing through a screen, and then there's intaglio or etching, and then there's a planar printmaking, which is monotype and painting on top of plexiglass plates, that kind of thing. So they're all different. Every tool is different, the results are all different. But with etching, it's probably the most diverse of each one of the printmaking techniques, with all the different things you can do with it.
Would woodblock printing be considered part of?
Yes, sorry, I forgot woodblock.
There's so many different families that fall under the printmaking umbrella, and there's so many new techniques that are coming out now with non-toxic materials. And
photo processing.
And photo processing that weren't available to the old masters. So the technique of printmaking has advanced and evolved over the years to really take over a whole umbrella of different techniques.
Yeah.
So in a separate conversation that I had with Justin, going over to Open Ground Studios, what you're doing, this is where the old, what was the cafe? Where's
Alternative Cafe.
This is where the old Alternative Cafe was.
Yep.
And he was bowled over because he said, you know, it's amazing a town of Monterey has this kind of facility. So let's discuss a little bit what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you. Yeah, we opened Open Ground in May this year, and it's just been an amazing ride. The community has really embraced it. It's a community art studio with printmaking at its core, as well as book arts. And so we have now 3 presses, etching presses, and we have an acid room with a ferric chloride, which is the most non-toxic acid you can use. The traditionalists used a hydrochloric acid for copper etching and nitric acid for zinc etching, which is really quite toxic. And so we have the non-toxic acids for copper. We also have just all the supplies and equipment needed to really work independently in that medium. And it's been really exciting to see people coming to the studio and wanting to get involved in printmaking, having never seen it before, as well as giving access to people like Justin, who maybe haven't had the kind of space to spread out and be able to use printmaking.
Yeah, so are you finding a new generation now gravitating to this form? I mean, is it?
I hope so. Yeah. I hope so. I mean, the Monterey Peninsula is really rich with printmaking, I think, with historically, but also with the MPC printmaking program that's been established that has really drawn a lot of really interesting people to it, and far and wide, from Santa Cruz on down to Big Sur. So that's been really a nice support system as well.
A lot of artists are scared and worried about trying etching in the first place because of the materials involved and the cost of a printing press. So it keeps a lot of people away from the art. And most art lovers aren't really familiar with the etching techniques and what an etching is. And one of the things that I've always tried to do is to kind of inform the public of the rich history of this art and how far it goes back and how important it is on the, for the art on the Monterey Peninsula.
You know, I mean, we have, again, Armin Hansen, August Gay,
Fernand Bergdorf, Joe Mora.
Bergdorf, you know, so again, it's, and why? Why was there the tradition here? I mean, this is,
You can speak to that more than I can.
Well, number one, it's such a beautiful area with the historic adobes and the architectural wonders of the Monterey Peninsula, plus the landscape and seascapes that are available to artists. But most artists, to enable to produce art that's affordable to the general public, go to printmaking because they can produce limited edition series that are cost affordable to most art buyers. Whereas an oil painting might be $10,000, maybe a limited edition etching would be 1/10 of that cost. So it's a way for artists to distribute their art and get their art out there in a cost-effective method to the general art buying public.
So what was your experience in Paris different from here? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that was in the 80s. Well, that's a question that's kind of blown me away. Well, we did color, which was a brand new thing for me. With etching, it's typically one color. It's one of the hardest mediums to get multiple colors in the printmaking world. But Stanley Hayter and his cadre of people that he worked with over the years really developed a color viscosity printmaking technique that involves large rollers. I'm going to hold this up. This is a brayer. It's just a small rubber brayer. We use this a lot in many applications in printmaking, but if you imagine the size of this roller being this big and this round, to apply ink to the surface of that then rolls across the surface of the plate, manipulating the amount of oil in each one of the inks so that they self-separate. So they used to call it, or Hayter preferred calling it simultaneous color printing and not color viscosity, but I had to learn that. In fact, that's what we did there. We had to do an experimental plate that was under his direction, and once we got that done, we could work on any imagery we wanted, but we worked on zinc, and it was fully expected that we would do full color. So I brought that knowledge back home with me, and to this day it's been amazing to have that experience.
And and also I know that you're doing a lot of with book printing and book repair. So let's talk about a little of the other stuff that's going on at Open Ground.
Open Ground is a community art center that we artists work there on a regular independent basis, that they can have access to the studio anytime they want if they're full members. Otherwise, general members can use it on a day basis if they like, but we teach classes and workshops and everything from printmaking to drawing to book arts. And book arts are a relatively new art form, meaning in the last 50 years or so, where artists are really looking at the form of the book and the intimacy of the book and making art somehow pulsing from that core, whether it's altering the book or making their own hand-bound books. There is a lot of conservation and bookbinding that can take place in book arts as well, but it's not limited to that. So we're slowly acquiring equipment for that. It's going to take some time, but we're doing everything we can by hand right now. And it's really it's a beautiful marriage, because oftentimes a lot of printmakers will move towards books to be able to describe something in a different way where their story gets unfolded similar to a book. And same way with book artists. If they have never used presses before, there's a lot more you can do with your books if you have access to a press.
Now, are people, again, I know that you want people to be comfortable, even if they don't have the expertise or the deep experience, to come and see what you're doing. How do they find you? I mean, just to give a shout out to the audience here.
Yes, how do you find us? Well, we're on Fremont and Seaside.
That's a good...
We have gallery hours on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. from 1 to 5 and Saturday from 12 to 4. We are actually having an open house on Saturday, November 30th, which is a holiday open house where we'll have hot cider and cookies, and we're having a big exhibition of all of our artist members. So you'll be able to see 16 different artists working in all of these art forms and see their work, plus all of our handmade crafts that are going to be for sale for the holidays as well. So that would be a great introduction for people to come on by and see.
Okay. What's your website where people can find you?
It's opengroundstudios.com. And ground, if you'll notice the name, it comes from the whole idea that an etching ground is something that protects you and protects the plate, but until the ground is open, the image can't evolve.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, so I want to just use the opportunity again to talk about the show that we're going to have at the Museum of Monterey. And again, we have a terrific collection of Armand Hansen's, of August Gay's, of Joe Mora's. I'd like to get some more Joe Mora into this, but putting together the old with the new, and so I'm looking really excited about this. Justin and I did a introductory video last week. You and I can do an introductory video, and then we should be starting to put this together in the next couple of months. So stay tuned, viewers. We'll you'll hear the announcement, and we'll be having an opening quite soon.
Can I speak to that?
Yes. Yes.
So that we're going to be having the old masters, right, Justin?
Yes.
Having an exhibition of their work,
yes.
And then hopefully 3 contemporary artists, Justin, myself, and another person that I'm hoping will be Dora Rosenbaum. She does very contemporary installation kind of art, but uses etching as the core principle behind it, which is what I think is really interesting, because Justin's work is very representational and very in line with the master's work. My work is also representational, but much more contemporary in its process. And I explore a variety of color and different things. And then Dora's work is just kind of off the charts contemporary in terms of conceptual based. It's all about the idea and potentially the multiplicity that printmaking can have. And Justin made a good point about the fact that prints, evolved and became really important in the art world exchange because of the multiplicity aspect of being able to do an edition. But today's printmakers are far less interested in the traditional aspects of that, because they may or may not have a market to sell to 50 people, so why should they make 50? So what they'll do is they'll make 50 to use in a different way, perhaps. Or they might only make 1 and then change it around.
Absolutely. I think the show will also give the audience, the general public, an idea of the old masters of Monterey's past, contrasted with the new etchers of today.
Well, guys, thank you so much.